5,000 years ago, the Bronze Age wizards of Sumer decided that the invisible powers that made a baby be born or water fall from the sky were magical gods living in the heavens. The Bronze Age myths may have started off as genuine misconceptions, but 3,000 years later, the Iron Age rewrites of them were confidence tricks played upon the common people by self-anointed high priests of imaginary gods to deceive the gullible into giving them money and letting them loose on their children. Little by little, generations upon generations of alchemists, chemists, biochemists, and inorganic biochemistry experts like Professor Naomi Hoshino figured out that big things like people are made of little things like proteins, and that big events like pregnancy are made of little events like the formation of peptide bonds prescribed by the recipe of messenger RNA.
By the mRNA message unit magic code.
Peptide bond! Clipping inside! Clipping inside!
Long time did biocomplex churn, the protein grew by tibs and tomes, amino acids linked and turned by the catalytic ribosome. Protein-releasing factor sensed the end. Her vorpal arms went snicker-snout. Oh, frabjous day, Calloo, Calais! The protein chain came streaming out. Then ribosome-releasing factor, with jaws that bite and claws that free, released the synthesizing complex and chortled in his glee. 'Twas brillig, and the slithy ribosome did gyre and gimble in the wabe. All mimsy was mRNA, and protein chain outgrabe.
But despite all the wonderful discoveries of science being publicly available for anyone to read, many people, even today, still fall under the spell of 2,000-year-old spins on 5,000-year-old fantasies. Why is this? Why do otherwise sensible people still fall into the fraudster's trap, even after the institutional paedophilia of the Catholic Church has been exposed in the mass media. Let's ask Arthur Fallowfield, the world-famous philosopher beyond our ken.
What about you, Fallowfield?
Well, I think the answer lies in the soil.
Yes, well, he always says that, no matter what the question is. Arthur is a true believer in the omnipresent, omniscient, omnipotent will of the soil. You might think Arthur is an old fart blowing in the wind, but in this case he's actually right. Because the reason people are easily deceived lies in their brains, which are indeed made from the soil, from out of the decayed remains of dead creatures that are eaten by living plants, that are eaten by herbivores, that are eaten by carnivores with canine teeth, like people, with a little help from our friend the sun, without whose energy we would still be huddled around hydrothermal vent proton gradients at the bottom of the sea, where life on Earth most probably began. It was the blue-green cyanobacteria algae that set us free to roam the surface of the Earth and even fly to the moon, because it was they who, about 4 billion years ago, invented a way of capturing the sun's energy and storing it in their bodies. Photosynthesis produces free oxygen as a byproduct, without which you and I couldn't breathe. The cyanobacteria invented sex, too. Without their foundation work, animals like us would never have existed. So if there's anyone we should fall down on our knees in homage to, it's the cyanobacteria. But knowing that living brains are made of recycled parts of dead bodies, powered by the sun's energy captured by vegetables, still doesn't explain why so many of them believe Iron Age myths about what makes the world go around. To solve the puzzle and find the reason, we have to look deep inside the human brain to see how it works. Your brain is made of the same stuff that cockroach brains and sea slug brains are made of. Elementary executive information processing cells called neurons and their housekeeping helper, glia cells. The biochemistry of a neuron is elaborate, but the computational function it performs is very simple. It receives information at its dendrite synapses and weighs up all the evidence it receives, some positive and some negative, and makes up its miniature mind between yes and no. It sends its decision along its axon to its terminals, which pass it on to other neurons or to a muscle cell or gland cell. The executive heart of a neuron, its decision maker, is the axon hillock. This gatekeeper has electrochemical properties which computationally function as an information threshold. If the net sum of all the neuron's input signals exceeds the threshold, a voltage potential spike is induced along the neuron's axon and travels down it at about the speed of sound. The spike is an all or none response. It either happens or it doesn't. It's either on or off, yes or no, 1 or 0. The human brain is a biological, digital computer. The electronic digital computer that you are watching this movie on is made of electronic circuits which are physically different to neurons, but which also represent information as all or none binary signals. Computer software can simulate the computational function of a biological neuron, and in August 2014, IBM Research announced they had made an electronic computer chip containing 1 million artificial hardware neurons, about the same number that a cockroach brain has. Despite their tiny brains, cockroaches are smart enough to be able to live in your house against your wishes, eat your food when you're not looking, and avoid being captured by you unless you're very quick with a rolled-up newspaper or attack them with biological weapons, a war crime under the Geneva Protocol. Like human brains, cockroach brains are intelligent, capable of learning new tricks. Even the microscopic brain of a sea slug, containing just a few thousand neurons, is capable of learning to adapt its behavior to cope with changing circumstances. Biologists use the word plasticity to characterize a brain's ability to learn by changing itself, by growing new neurons, letting unwanted ones wither away, and by forming new synapses and modifying old ones. The plasticity of the human brain is at its greatest when it's still growing new neurons. This is why young children are more open to new ideas and can pick up new languages easily. However, by about the age of 20, the human body, including the skull and the brain inside it, stops expanding, which is why old dogs can't learn new tricks as easily as young ones. Neurons are born to learn. Aside from the innate predilections given to us by our genetic inheritance, our minds are born as blank canvases, which will accept any picture anyone cares to paint on it, especially people whose love we crave, such as our parents and other people that we can see our parents love. But just as it is easy for neurons to learn, it is hard for them to unlearn. New information which does not resonate with what's already inside a mind tends to be overlooked or to provoke emotional reaction.
You got the absolute pits of the world, you know that?
I'm going to award a point against you, Mr. McEnroe.
But for all their superior intelligence, children lack the worldly wisdom needed to survive and are dependent upon their guardians for protection and support. Children learn not by being told, but by subconsciously imitating the behavior, language, and beliefs of their carers. Only when they reach puberty do people start to develop an independent spirit. So it is prepubescent children that are the prime targets of churches. Children's growing brains absorb new information easily and have little worldly wisdom, so are less able to tell fact from fiction. And their lack of life experience makes them more trusting, more easy prey. Suffer the little children to come unto me is a double-think smokescreen. In 1557, the founder of the Jesuits, Ignatius Loyola, carelessly or perhaps proudly remarked, "Give me a child of 7 and I will show you the man." Loyola knew that loyalties formed during childhood are unlikely to change in adulthood, even when their deception is revealed to them later in life. Loyalty is a powerful filter of information. Like wolves or dolphins, humans cooperatively hunt in packs. For a pack to be successful, it needs to have a group strategy. It needs a leader to command and control the pack movements. Adults can smile knowingly at children who are so naive that they believe the tooth fairy or Santa Claus is real. But adults themselves are no less gullible when it comes to loyally, unquestioningly accepting the explanations of their own leaders relayed by fatherly script readers like Walter Cronkite. Loyalty is a cognitive blindfold, which is why, if I tell you that your mindset too has been and is being programmed by an authority you respect feeding you disinformation or propaganda, you will probably reply,